All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's settle in, get comfortable, and see what the night has in store for us this time. Welcome back. This is our last full week before the holidays really get underway. Well, I won't say that really because, as we talked about last time, Hanukkah actually started. I think it was on was it on Thursday? I think it was. Anyway, so we're in the thick of the holidays, and we're on the home stretch of a month of festive readings. As we've found out, this is a rather restrictive challenge when we're sticking to the public domain. There are many and myriad short stories, poems, ideas. Oh, that's right, it started on Sunday. We were right around the starting period at our last stream. But yeah, as we've discovered, there are many and myriad different short stories, poems, novelettes, epistles, you name it, to fit the season. But really, from what I've found, among the classics, at least things in the public domain, and even in the more modern things, for actual full-length, real books, there's kind of a dearth of selection. We don't really have a whole lot to choose from for a proper holiday festive reading. That's not to say that there's not enough content, but I would have liked to have like a central hallmark of a big mainstay book to get us through the season. It's honestly more than a little disappointing that Dickens ran so short. I was kind of banking on him being the one, but no, the one and only time Dickens wrote in brief was for the holidays. That's not to take anything away from A Christmas Carol, but it was our best hope. But let's not be too let down, because that just means that we'll get to sample a whole veritable smorgasbord of different authors, different traditions, different ideas and themes. For real. Yeah, getting old is certainly realizing that there is a lot that is not quite as we remembered it. Let me see if we can fix the buffering a bit. I'm not dropping frames, so I think it is a strictly YouTube issue here. And I think we're okay. Wink, wink, and nudge, nudge. But we'll see how things behave. I do see about an almost 10-second delay between my preview and live window, and we're dropping into buffering. Not dropping frames, though. So this is, I think, strictly on YouTube being a persnickety old humbug. It works. It works. It fits the season. Well, we'll try and power through. If I notice that we're actually dropping frames, then we'll try and pause and let things catch up. If it's just running slowly, we'll just have to live with it. Alright, so tonight we have selected a collection of short stories. This first is well, really I think there are 3 or 4 volumes in this one, but we'll be going through the first tonight, probably getting through the first. And then we have some other selections and other stories that we can pull from, so we're not going to be locked into this one. But this one in particular I saw was pretty interesting. It is a take on Christmases around the world, the different traditions, the different ways that the holiday is celebrated and rung in. We've seen some of that already in the differences even between how the British Christmas that we saw in A Christmas Carol differed very significantly from the German Christmas in Nutcracker, from the strange, almost fey Christmas thing that we saw in The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. I'm sure that one was made up, but you never know. There are certain things that may have been pulled from tradition of their own. So, as I was saying, we've seen the different ideas, the different trends and things that could shape how the holiday is celebrated. So, let's actually take a bit of a more close look at that with this next book, or this collection of stories, In the Yule-Log Glow, Christmas Tales from Round the World, edited and collected by Harrison S. Morris. Now this one actually has some intro, preamble, and some transition between stories, so we'll go ahead and read it as written, so that we can get the full experience. So, let's go ahead and jump in. This book one is entitled Philadelphia, J.B. Lippincott Company, 1900. Presumably that's the publishing house that put this together after he edited it, but the preambles are always somewhat awkward. Anyway, so, The Threshold. If, gentle reader, you will step across this threshold now, as the moon rises in the keen Christmas air, you will find a place by the ruddy ingle within doors. You may hear, if you will, a babble of voices from many lands, telling over the adventures of the road and falling into the good fellowship of the happy Christmas season. Here from the north, with his ample furs thrown back, sits the Russian in friendly talk with a gay little wanderer from the Sicilian valleys. There, with elbow crooked by a foaming tankard, leans the German, narrating his perils and pleasures to a gallant Frenchman and a sun-browned Spaniard, who smoke and chatter together, as now and then Mynheer stops for a pull at his pipe. A Swede, Norwegians, and Englishmen or two, and even a happy-go-lucky American, are clustered about the Yule log, for the place you have entered is the common room of the wide world. As you slip the latch and take your seat, some traveler calls out, "A Merry Christmas!" Another cries out, "A story, a story!" And so they fall to, each from his own script taking forth a native tale. And so they sit the midnight out listening and talking in turn, while the good cheer goes round in endless abundance, and laughter and song make interludes for the varied narratives. Alright, and then next section here, a tale spoken by a greybeard out of the east. Gracious powers, perhaps you are 100 years old, now I think of it. You look more than 100, yes, you may be 1,000 years old for all I know. Thackeray. The Three Kings of Cologne, a Christmas tale from an old English chronicle. Written by John of Hildesheim in the 14th century. Here followeth the manner and form of seeking and offering, and also of the burying and translations of the three holy and worshipful kings of Cologne, Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. Now, when the children of Israel were gone out of Egypt, and had won and made subject to them Jerusalem and all the land lying about, so that no man durst set against them in all that country for dread that they had of them, then there was a little hill called Vos, which was also called the Hill of Victory. And on this hill the ward of them of Ind was ordained, and kept by diverse sentinels by night and by day against the children of Israel, and afterward against the Romans, so that if any people at any time proposed with strong hand to enter into the country of the kingdom of Ind, anon sentinels of other hills about through tokens, warned the keepers of the Hill of the Vase. And by night they made a great fire, and by day they made a great smoke. For that hill Vase passeth the height of all other hills in all the east. Wherefore, when any such token was seen, then all manner of men made ready to defend themselves from the enemy that approached. Now, in the time when Balaam prophesied of the star that should betoken the coming of Christ, all the great lords and all the other people of Ind and in East desired greatly to see the star of which he spake, and gave gifts to the keepers of the Hill of Oz, and moreover hired them with great rewards, that, if it so were, they saw by day or by night, far or near, any light or any star in the air other than was seen beforetime, anon they should show and send them word. And thus was it, that for so long a time the fame of this star was borne through all the lands of the East, until of the name of the Hill of Oz arose up a worshipful and a great kindred of it in Ind, which is called the progeny of Oz, even unto this day. And there is not a more mighty kindred in all the kingdoms of the East, for this worshipful kindred came first from the king's blood that was named Melchior, that offered gold to our Lord, as ye shall hereafter learn. In the year of our Lord, 1200, when the city of Akkon, that in this country is called Akkers, flourished and stood in virtue, joy, and prosperity, and was inhabited richly with worshipful princes and lords, and divers orders of men of religion, and all manner of men of all nations and tongues, so that there was no city like unto it, in nobility and might. Then, because of its great name, and of the marvels that were there, the greatest of birth that were of the progeny of Oz came out of Ind unto Akkon. And when they saw there all things more wonderful than in Ind, then, because of delight, they abode there and made a fair and strong castle for any king or lord. And they brought with them out of the east many rich and wonderful ornaments and jewels. And among all other jewels, they brought a diadem of gold arrayed with precious stones and pearls. And about its edge stood letters of Chaldaic, and a star, made like after the star that appeared to the three kings of the east when they sought God, with the sign of the cross beside. And that diadem was Melchior's, the king of Nubia and of Araby, that offered gold to the babe in the manger. And afterward, the master of the order of Templars received the same diadem of gold and many other precious jewels. But when that order was destroyed, the diadem and precious ornaments were lost, and have never been found unto this day. Wherefore there was great sorrow made in all the country for a long time after. But these same princes of Oz brought with them out of Ind books written in Hebrew and Chaldaic, concerning the life and deeds of these three blessed kings, which books were afterward translated into the French tongue. And so, from these books, and from hearsay and sight, and also from sermons and homilies out of divers other works, the story here written hath been brought together into one book. And you shall understand that the old kindred of Oz beareth always in its manner unto this day a star, with the sign of the cross, made after the same manner as it appeared to the three blessed kings. Now, it so happened that after Balaam had prophesied of this star, the more it was sought for, the more its fame increased through the land of Ind and Chaldee, and all the people desired to see it. So they ordained 12 of the wisest and greatest clerks of astronomy that were in all that country about, and gave them great hire to keep watch upon this hill of Oz, for the star that was prophesied of Balaam. And the cause that there were ordained 12 men was, that if one man died, another should be put in his stead, and also that some should keep watch at one time, and some another. Nevertheless, the people looked not only after the star, but after the man who was betokened by the star. the which man should be lord of all folk. And they of Ind and Chaldee, who came often into Jerusalem because of merchandise and also for disport, which, for the most part, be learned in astronomy, said that in Ind were many stars in the firmament that might not be seen by night in Jerusalem, but specially on this hill of Voz in clear weather were seen many and diverse strange stars that at the foot of the hill were not seen. Yet this hill of Voz hath no more breadth than a little chapel is made upon, the which the 3 worshipful kings did build of stone and timber. And there be about this hill many steps, upon which men go up to the chapel on high, and also there grew many good trees and herbs, and diverse spices all about the hill, for else man might not go well upon this hill, because it is so high and so narrow. There is also a pillar of stone, made above this chapel, of wondrous height, and in the head of the pillar standeth a great star, well made of gilt, and which turneth with the wind as a vane. And through the light of the sun by day, and of the moon by night, this star gives light a great way about the country. And many other marvels are spoken of this hill of Voz, the which were long to tell. Now, when the time of grace was come, that God would have mercy on all mankind, in which time the Father of heaven sent down his Son to take flesh and blood, and to be born of man for salvation of all the world. In that time, Octavianus, that was Emperor of Rome, sent out a commandment that all the people within his empire should be counted and taxed. And every man went forth from his dwelling place into his native country. Then came Joseph up from Nazareth unto Bethlehem, the city of David, because he was of the household and race of King David. And with him came Mary, that was his wife, and also great with child. And you shall understand that Bethlehem was never of much reputation, neither a place of great quantity. It hath a good site and good ground, for there be many caves and dens under the earth thereabout, and it is distant from Jerusalem but 2 little miles. And it is but a castle, but is called a city because King David was born there. And in that town was sometime a house which belonged to Isai, the father of David, where David was born and anointed into the kingdom of Israel by Samuel the prophet. And in this same dwelling was the Son of Heaven, born of Mary. And this same house was at the end of a street, that was in that time called the Covered Street, because, to keep out the great heat and burning of the sun, this street was canopied above with black cloths and other things, for such is the use in that country always. And here was wont to be great bargaining, or a fair once a week of old clothes, and specially of trees or lumber, by the little house which stood before a den under the earth, made and shaped like a little cellar, where Isai and others that dwelt there after him put certain necessaries that belonged to the household, against the heat of the sun. It is also the manner in all that country that there be certain houses, the which be called there Alchan, that we call hostelries. And in these houses be mules, horses, asses, and camels, always ready, that, if so, that any merchant or any man that travelled by the way, be it far or near, need any beast for himself, or for his merchandise, then he goeth to such a house, and there he may hire a horse, or what beast that he will, for a certain price. And when he hath such a beast, then he goeth from that city to another, where to abide and rest him for a time. Then he dischargeth his beast of his burden, and so sendeth him to a house called there also Alchan. And the master of the house giveth his beast meat, and when he may, he sendeth it home, to the same place that it came from. And such a house was, before the birth of Christ, in the place where Christ was born. But about the time of the Nativity, that house was all destroyed, insomuch that there was nothing left but broken walls on every side, and a little cave under the earth. and a little unthrifty house before the cave, and there men sold bread on the same ground, for it is the usage in all that country that all the bread that is sold shall be brought unto a certain place. Now, when Octavianus had sent out a commandment as it is aforesaid, then went Joseph and Mary, riding on an ass, late in the eventide, toward the city of Bethlehem. And because they came so late, and all places were occupied with pilgrims and other men, and also because they came in poor array and went about the city, none would receive them. And specially, men say, because that Mary, a young woman sitting upon an ass, heavy and sorry and full weary of the way, was near to the time of bearing of her child. Then Joseph led his wife into this shed that none took keep of, down into the little dark house. And there our Lord Jesus Christ, the same night, was born of the Virgin, without any disease or sorrow of her body, for salvation of all mankind. And in that house, before the cave of old time, was left a manger of the length of a fathom, made in the wall, and to that same manger was an ox of a poor man tied, that none might harbor. And beside that ox Joseph tied his ass, and in that same manger Mary wrapped her blessed Son in cloths, and laid him on high before the ass and the ox, for there was none other place. And shepherds were fast by in the same country, keeping their sheep in the night. And an angel of heaven came and stood beside them with great light, wherefore they were in much dread. And the angel said to them, Be not afraid, for I tell you a great joy that shall be to all people. For this day is born to us our Lord Christ in the city of David, and this shall be to you a token. Ye shall find a young child wrapped in cloths and put in a manger. And then suddenly there came a great multitude of angels of heaven, praising God, who said, Joy be to God on high, and peace in earth to men of good will. Now, the place where the angel appeared to the shepherds that night, when Christ was born, is but half a mile from Bethlehem. And in the same place, David, when he was a child, fed sheep and kept them from the bear and the lion. Some books say that the shepherds in that country twice in the year are wont to keep their sheep in the night, and therein times be when the day and the night are both of one length. You shall understand that the land about Bethlehem is all mountainous for the most part, so that in some places a man shall not well know winter from summer, and in some places it is right cold, and some it is both winter and summer at one time. And sometimes on the mountains, in the parts of the east, men shall find snow in the month of August, and that snow is gathered by them that dwell about, and put in caves, and afterward it is borne to the market, where the great lords of the country will buy it, and take it to their houses, and set it in a basin upon their board to make their drink cold. In September and October, when the sun cometh a little low in that country, then seeds and all manner of herbs commonly begin to wax in the fields. As in this country herbs begin to grow in March and April. Also in some parts of the east they reap corn in April and in March, but most in May, as in some places the ground is higher, in some places lower. But beside Bethlehem are many more places of good pasture and of flat ground than elsewhere, insomuch that at Christmastide barley beginneth to ear and to wax ripe. And then men send thither from divers countries their horse and mules to make them fat. And that time we call among us Christmas. They call in their language the time of herbage. And forasmuch as when Christ was born, peace was in all the world, and betwixt Bethlehem and that place where the angel appeared to the shepherds was but half a mile, and a little way more, and also there was no great cold thereabout. Therefore the shepherds, all that winter night and day, now in one place, now in another, dwelled there with their sheep, and so they do yet to this day. Now, when Christ was born of the Virgin Mary, for salvation of all mankind, then his star, that was prophesied of Balaam, and long awaited and looked for by the 12 astronomers on the hill of Vaz, at that same night, and at that same hour, began to arise in the manner of a sun, bright shining, and so after, in the form of an eagle, it ascended from the hill of Voz, and all that day in highest air it abode without moving, insomuch that when the sun was most hot and most high, there was no difference in shining betwixt them. But when the day of the nativity had passed, the star ascended up into the firmament, and it was nothing like to stars that be painted in diverse places, for it had right many long streaks and beams, more burning and lighter than a brand of fire, and as an eagle flying and beating the air with its wings, right so the streaks and beams of the star stirred it about. And it had in itself the form and likeness of a young child, and above him a sign of the Holy Cross, and a voice was heard in the star saying, "This day is born to us the King of Jews, that folk have awaited, and Lord is of them. Go and seek him, and do him worship." Then all the people, both man and woman, of all the country about, when they saw this wonderful and marvelous star, and also heard the voice out of the star, were greatly aghast, and had wonder thereof. Yet they knew well that it was the star that was prophesied by Balaam, and long time was desired of all the people in that country. Now, when the three worshipful kings, who in that time reigned in Ind, Chaldee, and Persia, were informed by the astronomers of this star, they were right glad that they had grace to see the star in their days. Wherefore these three worshipful kings, though each of them was far from the other, and none knew of the other's purpose, yet in the same hour the star appeared to all three, and then they ordained and purposed them with great and rich gifts, and many rich and diverse ornaments that belonged to a king's array, and also with mules and camels and horses, charged with treasure, and with a great multitude of people, to go seek and worship the Lord and King of the Jews, that was newborn, as the voice of the star had commanded. And furthermore, they arrayed themselves the much more honestly and worshipfully, because they knew well that he was a worthier king than any of them was. And you shall understand that there be 3 Indias, of which these 3 lords were king, and all the lands for the most part are islands. And there are also great waters and wilderness full of wild and perilous beasts and horrible serpents, and there grow also reeds so high and so great that men make thereof houses and ships, and these isles are divided every one by itself far from the others, so that only with great travail shall a man pass from one kingdom to another. Now, in the first Ind was the land of Nubia, and therein reigned King Melchior. In the time that Christ was born, therein also is the land of Araby, in which is the hill Sinai. And a man may lightly sail by the Red Sea out of Egypt and Syria into Ind. In this land is found gold wonderfully red, like thin and small roots, and that gold is the best that there is in the world. Where herein is also a hill called Bena, where is found a precious stone called smaragd. In the second Ind was the kingdom of Gudolia, of which Balthasar was king when Christ was born. And this Balthasar offered incense to the babe, for in this land many more good spices grow than in all the countries of the east, and especially incense, more than in all the places of the world, and it droppeth down out of certain trees in the manner of gum. In the third kingdom, in the third Ind, was the kingdom of Thars. Of that kingdom was Jaspar, king at the birth of Christ. And Jaspar offered myrrh to the young child. And in this land is the isle of Egresula, where groweth myrrh more plentifully than in any place of the world, and it waxeth like ears of corn that are burnt with the weather, and right thick, and when it is ripe, it is so soft that it cleaveth to men's clothes as they go by the way. Now, when these 3 worshipful kings were passed forth out of their kingdoms, the star evenly went before each king and his people. And when they stood still and rested, the star stood still. And when they went forward again, the star always went before them in virtue and strength, and gave light all the way. And, as it is written before, in the time that Christ was born, there was a peace in all the world. Wherefore, in all the cities and towns which they went through, there was no gate shut, neither by night nor by day. And all men of the cities and towns that these worthy kings went through in the night were wonderfully aghast, and passingly marveled thereof. For they saw kings and vast multitudes go by in great haste. But they knew not what they were, nor whence they came, nor whither they should go. On the morrow, the way was greatly befouled with horses' hoofs, whereof they were in much doubt what it might mean, and great altercation was made among them for a long time. Furthermore, these kings rode forth over hills, waters, valleys, plains, and other diverse and perilous places without hindrance or disease, for all the way seemed to them plain and even, and they never took shelter by night, nor by day, nor ever rested, nor did their horses or other beasts ever eat or drink till they had come to Bethlehem. And all this time seemed to them but a day. And thus, through the mercy of God and the leading of the star, they came unto Jerusalem in Bethlehem, the 13th day after Christ was born, at the uprising of the sun, whereof is no doubt, for they found Mary and her son in the same place where the child was born, and laid in the manger. But when the three blessed kings with their host and company were almost come to Jerusalem, saving but 2 miles, then a great and dark cloud held all the earth, and in that dark cloud they lost the star. And Melchior with his people come fast by Jerusalem beside the hill of Calvary, where Christ was afterward crucified. And there the king abode in a cloud of fog and in darkness. At that time the hill of Calvary was a rock of 12 degrees high, where thieves and other men for diverse trespasses were put to death. And there was beside this hill a place where 3 highways met together. But because of the darkness of the road, and also because they knew not the way, they abode there, and went no further at that time. And next came Balthazar, and he abode under the same cloud, beside the Mount of Olives, in a little town that is called Galilee. Then, when the 2 kings were come to these places, the cloud began to ascend and wax clear, yet the star appeared not. But when they saw that they were near to the city of Jerusalem, knowing not each other, they took their way thither with all their folk. And when they came to where the 3 ways met, then also appeared King Jaspar with all his host. And so these 3 glorious kings, each with his host and burdens and beasts, met together in the highway beside the hill of Calvary. And notwithstanding that none of them ever before had seen the other, nor knew him, nor had heard of his coming, yet at their meeting, each one with reverence and joy kissed the other, and they were of diverse language, yet all, seeming, used the same tongue. So afterward, when they had spoken together, and each had told his purpose and the cause of his journey, and the cause of all was learned to be the same, then they were much more glad and more fervent. And so they rode forth, and suddenly, at the uprising of the sun, they came into the city of Jerusalem. And when they knew that this was the city, which the Chaldeans of old time had besieged and destroyed, they were right glad, expecting to have found the king born in that city. But Herod and all his people were greatly disturbed at their sudden coming, for their company and beasts of burden were of so great a number that the city might not receive them. But for the most part, they lay without the gates all about, whereof Isaiah prophesied, "The strength of folk cometh to thee, that is to say, to the city of Jerusalem. Great plenty of camels shall do thee service, and dromedaries of Madian and Ephah shall come to thee. All men shall come from Saba, bringing gold and incense and showing praise to God." So these 3 worshipful kings, when they were come into the city, asked of the people concerning the child that was born. And when Herod heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And he gathered together all his princes and priests, and asked them where Christ should be born. And they said, "In Bethlehem of Judea." Then Herod privily summoned to him these 3 kings, and learned of them the time that the star appeared. and so sent forth unto Bethlehem, saying, Go and inquire busily of this child, and when you have found him, come and tell me, and that I may go and do him worship. Now, when these 3 kings were informed of the birth of Christ, and of the place where he was born, and so were passed out of Jerusalem, then the star appeared to them again, as it did erst, and went before them, till they came to Bethlehem. And fast by that place were the shepherds, to whom the angel appeared with great light, showing them the birth of Christ. And the 3 kings spake with them, and when the shepherds saw the star, they run together and told how the angel had appeared to them, and furthermore, all that the angel had spoken to them. And the kings were wondrous glad, and with good cheer heard and took consideration of the shepherds' words. And so, from witness, and from the words of the shepherds, and from the voice of the angel that was heard out of the star, they had no doubt of the thing. Then anon, when they knew that they were come to Bethlehem, they got down from their horses, and changed all their array, and clothed themselves in the best and richest that they had, as kings should be clothed. And always the star went forth before them. Now, the nearer the kings came to the place where Christ was born, the brighter shined the star. And they entered Bethlehem the 6th hour of the day. And then they rode through the covered street, till they came before that little house. And there the star stood still, and then descended and shone with so great a light that the little house and the cave within were full of radiance. Till anon the star again went upward into the air, and stood still always above the same place. Yet the light ever remained in the house where Christ and Mary were. So, as it is said in the Gospel, they went into the house, and found the child, and fell down and worshipped him, and offered to him gifts of gold, myrrh, and incense. Of this example came afterward a usage, that in all the countries of the East no man should go into the presence of the Sultan, but he brought gold or silver or somewhat else in his hands. And also, ere he spoke to the Sultan, he should kiss the ground. And this is a custom which is used in all the countries of the East to this day. But the Franciscan friars, when they approached the Sultan, offered to him only pears or apples, for they might not touch gold nor silver, and these offerings were received by the Sultan with all reverence and meekness. Now, on the day that the 3 kings sought Christ and worshipped him, he was a little child of 13 days old, and he was somewhat fat, and lay wrapped in poor clothes in the hay of the manger up to his arms. And Mary, his mother, as it is written in diverse books, was, in person, fleshy and somewhat brown. In the presence of the 3 kings, she was covered with a poor white mantle, which she held close before her with her left hand. Her head was concealed altogether, save her face, with a linen cloth, and she sat upon the manger, and with her right hand held up the young child's head. And the kings worshipped him, and kissed his hand devoutly, and laid their gifts beside his head. But what was done with these gifts ye shall learn hereafter. Good Lord, how long is this first story? I was expecting a little less than an entire retelling of the Nativity. Good Lord. Now Melchior, that offered gold to the Holy Child, was the least in stature and person of the 3 kings. Balthazar, that offered incense, was of a medium stature, and Jaspar, that offered myrrh, was most in person. Whereof is no doubt, for the prophet saith, Before him shall fall down Ethiops, and his enemies shall lick the earth. They shall come to thee that betrayed thee, and they shall worship the steps of thy feet. And having regard to the stature of men of that time, these kings were right little of person, insomuch that all manner of people marveled at them. And this showed well that they were come from far out of the east. For the nearer toward the uprising of the sun that men be born, the less they be of stature, and be feebler and more tender. I'm sorry, excuse me, what? And you shall understand that these 3 kings brought out of their lands many gifts and rich ornaments, which King Alexander left in Ind, in Chaldee, and in Persia, and all the ornaments which Queen Saba found in Solomon's temple, and diverse vessels that were of the king's house, and the temple of God in Jerusalem, which, in the time of its destruction, were borne into their countries by the Persians and Chaldeans, and many other jewels, both gold and silver and precious stones, brought they with them to offer to Christ. But when they found our Lord laid on high in the manger, and in poor clothes, and the star that gave so great light in all the place that it seemed as though they stood in a furnace of fire, then these kings were so sore afraid that of all the rich jewels and ornaments they brought with them, they chose nothing. When their treasury was opened, but what came first to their hands? For Melchior took a round apple of gold, in much as a man might hold in his hand, and 30 gilt pennies, and these he offered to our Lord. Balthasar took out of his treasury incense, and Jaspar took out myrrh, as it came first, and that he offered, with weeping and tears. And the kings were so aghast and so devout and fervent in their oblations, that to all the world that Mary said they gave but little consideration, save only that to every king as he offered his gifts she bowed her head meekly, and said, Deo gratias. That is to say, I thank God. When these 3 kings had thus performed their way in will, and done all things that they came for, then, as mankind asketh and would, they and all their men and beasts began to eat, and drink, and sleep, and betook them to rest and sport all that day in Bethlehem, for, as is said before, they had neither eaten nor drunk during 13 days. And then they meekly told to all men in that city how wonderfully the star had brought them thither from the furthest part of the world. Now, as the evangelist saith, a command came unto these kings in their sleep, that they should not return again to Herod, and so, by another way, they went home to their kingdoms. But the star that went before them appeared no more. And so these 3 kings, that suddenly met together at the Mount of Calvary, rode home together with great joy and honor, and rested by the way as men should do. And they rode through the provinces that Holofernes of old time had traversed with all his hosts. And the people supposed that Holofernes had come again, for as they journeyed into any town they were meekly and worshipfully received, and evermore they told what they had seen, done, and heard, so that their name and praise were never after forgot. But the way that before had taken only 13 days through the leading of the star, they found now to take 2 years, which was ordained, that all men should know what difference is between God's working and man's. Now, when Herod and the scribes heard that the kings were gone home again, and came not to him, as he had bade them, then of much envy and malice he pursued them a great way, and always he found the people bless them, and praise them, and tell of their nobility. Wherefore Herod burnt and destroyed all the land that was under his power where the kings had ridden, especially Tharsis and Cilicia, for he charged them that they had suffered the 3 kings privily to pass across the sea in their ships. And Herod's envy was great when he heard how marvelously the kings had come out of their lands in 13 days through the leading of the star, and how afterward they went home again without the star through guides and interpreters. Yet no man could tell, for wonder, how night and day they passed by, and for this reason the Paynims, who had no knowledge of Holy Writ, nor of the birth of Christ, called these 3 kings Magos, that is to say, wise men of the East. Now, when the kings were come with great travail to the hill of Voz, they made there, as is aforesaid, a fair chapel, in worship of the child they had sought. Also they made a covenant, to meet together at the same place once in the year, and there they ordained their burial. Then all the princes and lords and worshipful knights of their kingdoms, hearing of the return of these three kings, anon rode forth to them with great solemnity, and met them at the place aforesaid, and with meekness and humility received them. And when they heard how wonderfully God had wrought for their kings, they held them in more reverence, love, and dread forever after. So, when the kings had done what they would, they took leave of each other, and each one, with his people, rode home to his own land with great joy. And when they were come into their own realms, they preached to all the people what they had seen and done on their journey. And they made in their temples a star, after the likeness of that which appeared to them. Wherefore many Paynims left their errors and worshipped the Holy Child. And thus these three worshipful kings dwelt in their kingdoms in honest and devout conversation, until the coming of St. Thomas the Apostle. Now, after the three kings had gone forth from Bethlehem, there began to wax all about a great fame for Mary and her child, and for the kings of the East. Wherefore Mary, in dread of persecution, fled out of the little house where Christ was born, and went to another dark cave, and there abode. And diverse men and women loved her and ministered to her in all manner of necessities. But when she went out of the little house, Mary forgot, and left behind her her smock, and the clothes in which Christ was wrapped, folded together, and laid in the manger. And there they were, whole and fresh, in the same place to the time when St. Helen, the mother of Emperor Constantine, came thither long after. Anon, so great was grown Mary's fame that she durst not abide longer there for dread of Herod and the Jews. And an angel appeared to Joseph, saying, Arise, and take the child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and tarry there till I summon thee. For it is to come that Herod shall seek the child to slay him. Then Joseph arose, and took the child and his mother, and went into Egypt in the night. And there he remained until Herod died. And Mary and her son dwelt in Egypt 7 years. Okay. Before we continue, this is somehow more non-secular, more biblical and very obviously preachy than anything we've read. I should expect it, given that this is holidays and this sort of thing is, tied in tight with the actual Christmas literature. But, I mean, come on. Paradise Lost don't got nothing on this. Whew. And yes, always with reference to various completely irrelevant and unrelated historical figures, because that's how you anchor things to make it seem important. That's just my old reformed church kid coming out. Some of this gets a little frustrating sometimes. It is a good story, but I could use a little less King James. And it is told that by the road which Mary journeyed thither and came back again grew roses, which are called the roses of Jericho, and they grow in no other place. The shepherds of that country, in following their sheep, gather these roses in their season and sell them to pilgrims, and thus they be borne into diverse lands. And the place where Mary dwelt is now a garden, where groweth balm, and to every bush a Christian man among the Sultan's prisoners is assigned to protect it and keep it clean. For when a Paynim keepeth them, anon the bushes wax dry and grow no more. And this balm hath many virtues, the which were long to tell. But all men in the East believe truly that the place bears such a virtue of growing balm, because Mary dwelt there 7 years, and washed and bathed her son in its wells of water. And as to the gifts which the three kings gave to Christ, the 30 gilt pennies of Melchior were made of old by Thara, father of Abraham, and Abraham bare them with him. And when he went on pilgrimage out of the land of Chaldean to Hebron, which was then called Arabia, and there he bought with them a burial place for himself, his wife and his children, Isaac and Jacob. In exchange for the same 30 pieces, Joseph was sold by his brethren to merchants of Egypt. Afterward, when Jacob died, they were sent to the land of Sheba to buy diverse spices and ornaments for his sepulchre. And so they were put into the king's treasury of that land. Then, by process of time, at Jerusalem, but in the time of Rehoboam, King Solomon's son, when Jerusalem was destroyed and the temple despoiled, they were carried to the king of Arabia, and were put into the treasury with other spoils from the temple. All of this interconnectedness and the references and like the relics and things reminds me so very much of Arthurian legend and like questing for holy relics and the Grail and all that. Yeah, I'm like, wait, but remember, these are gold, and Judas paid with silver, so unless they were like transmuted down to be made worth less, probably they were like, they were sitting in the bag next to the pieces that Judas was paid with. That's probably what it is. Okay, let's see, where were we? And Melchior offered these same 30 pieces to Christ, because they were of the finest gold, and the best that he had. But when Mary went into Egypt, she lost all the gifts of the 3 kings by the way, bound all in one cloth together. Oh, okay, so it's not just the Mormons that lose very important things as they're going by. Cool. I got you, Mary. You're in good company. Or bad company. I don't know yet. And it happened, there was a shepherd, who had so great an infirmity, that no leech might heal him, and all that he had paid to the leeches to be whole, yet it might not be. But on a time, as he went into the fields with his sheep, he found these 30 gilt pennies, with incense and myrrh, bound all in a cloth together, and he kept them privily to himself, until, hearing tell of a holy prophet that healed all men of their infirmities, by a word, he came to Christ and prayed him for grace and help. And, being healed, he offered the gold and incense and myrrh to him with good devotion. And when Christ saw the 30 gilt pennies and precious herbs, he knew them well, and bade the shepherd go into the temple and offer them upon the altar. Now, when the priest saw such oblations laid upon the altar, he marveled much, and took all 3 things and put them in the common treasury. And afterward, when Judas escaped... Hang on. All right, we're going to get through this. All right. And afterward, when Judas Iscariot came into the temple to make covenant with the princes of the law to betray his master, they gave him for his pay the same 30 pieces of gold. And for them Judas sold his master. And after Christ was crucified, then Judas repented, and went to the temple and cast down to the princes of the law the 30 pieces. And with 15 of these gilt pennies the Jews bought a field of burial for pilgrims, and the other 15 they gave to the knights who kept the sepulchre of Christ. Oh yes, so after all of that time, they're finally split up. Cool, thanks. And the reason these 30 gilt pennies were called silver in the gospel, oh yeah, thank you for explaining, oh storyteller, notwithstanding they were fine gold, is that is the common usage in that country so to call them, as men in this country call gold from beyond the sea. Scuddies, motons, or florins. Moreover, in the East, the same print is made in gold and silver and copper, and the print on the 30 pieces is this. On one side is a king's head crowned, and on the other are written letters in Chaldaic, which men now cannot read. And many marvels are told of these pieces of gold, which were long to tell. You know, there's a point where, you know, if you're reading, like, some fanfic, and you reach the point where it's like, okay, we've gone beyond the straining of disbelief. Like, that was a step too far. I know I've been out of the church for a good number of years, but... yeah, you know what? We can be smug. The smugness is universal. We are all of us smug on this blessed day. How, when our Lord was ascended into heaven, then he sent St. Thomas, his apostle, into Ind, to preach there God's word. And as St. Thomas went about in the temples, he found a star in every one, painted after the manner of the star that appeared to the three kings when Christ was born, in which star was a sign of the cross, and a child above. And when St. Thomas saw this, he asked of the bishops what it was. And they told him that such a star of old time appeared on the hill of Vaz, in token of a child that was born, who should be king of the Jews, as was heard spoken out of the same star. And when St. Thomas had preached and taught the people the understanding of this star, and of the cross and the child, then he went to the kingdoms of the three kings, and he found them whole of body, and of a great age. And St. Thomas christened these three kings, and all their people, and the kings began anon to preach with the apostle. And when they had converted the people to the law of Christ, he ordained them to be archbishops. And after this, St. Thomas was slain. And in all that country where he was martyred, both men and women have visages shaped like hounds. Yet they be not hairy, and they are so unto this day. Now, under the hill of Vaz, St. Thomas and these three kings had made a rich city, and called it Sewell. And this city is the best and richest in all the country of Ind to this day. And therein is the habitation of Prester John, that is called Lord of Ind. And there dwelleth also the Patriarch of Ind, who is called Thomas, in worship of St. Thomas, and for an everlasting memorial. And when all things were disposed by these three kings, they went to the city of Sewell, and there they lived 12 years. And a little before the feast of Christ's Nativity, when these years were drawn to an end, there appeared a wonderful star above this city, and the kings knew that their time was nigh, when they should pass out of this world. Then of one assent they ordained a fair and large tomb for their burial in the church they had made in the city. And in the feast of Christmas they did, solemnly, God's service. And in the feast of the circumcision, the what? And in the feast of the circumcision, Melchior, king of Araby, laid him down before all his people, and without any disease yielded up his spirit. In the year of his age, 116. Then, in the feast of Epiphany, 5 days thereafter, Balthazar, king of Galilee and Saba, died in the year of his age 112. And then Jaspar, the third king, the 6th day after was taken into everlasting joy, and they were all buried in the same tomb that they had ordained. And the star that appeared over the city before their death abode always, till their bodies were translated unto Cologne, as they of Ind tell. Now, after much time had passed, Queen Helen, the mother of the glorious Emperor Constantine, began to think greatly of the bodies of these three kings, and she arrayed her with certain people and went into the land of Ind. That's my Protestant showing. That is a far too Catholic celebration. And she had much praise among the people, because of the finding of Mary's smock, and the cloths that Christ was wound in his childhood. And seeing that she was worshipped of all people, the Patriarch Thomas and Prester John took counsel of other lords and princes, and gave her the bodies of King Melchior, and King Balthasar. But the Nestorines had borne the body of the third king, King Jaspar, into the Isle of Egrisula, and these Nestorines were the worst heretics of the world. For the most part, they were black Ethiops, who painted Christ and his mother Mary and the three kings in their churches all in black, and the devil all white, in despite of all other Christian men. But because Queen Helen wished not that the three kings should be parted, she made many prayers and gave great gifts to the chief lords of the Isle of Egrisula, and thus anon did she get the body of King Jaspar. Ah yes, exactly what we needed. A little bit of casual racism. Thank you very much, classical story of Christmas. And you shall understand that after she had found the bodies of all of these three kings, Queen Helen put them into one chest, and arrayed it with great riches, and she brought them unto Constantinople with joy and reverence, and laid them in a church that is called Saint Sophia. And this church King Constantine did make, and he alone, with a little child, set up all the pillars of marble. Now, after the death of this worshipful King Constantine and Queen Helen aforesaid, there began a new persecution of heresy against the Christian faith, and of death against them that would maintain the law of Christ. That's true, I did disassociate for a moment after that remark, so there's that. The Greeks forsook the church, and chose a patriarch for themselves, whom they yet obey until this day. Now, in this persecution, the bodies and the relics of the three holy kings were put at no reverence, but utterly set at naught. For the Saracens and the Turks at this time won with strong battle the lands of Greece and Armenia, and destroyed a great part of these lands. Then came an emperor of Rome, who was called Mauritius, and through the help of them of Milan, he recovered all these lands again. And, as is said among men in that country, through counsel of this emperor, the bodies of the three kings were carried into Milan, and they were there laid with all solemnity and worship in a fair church, which is called Saint Eustorgio, because he had asked the bodies from the emperor, and, being granted them, had sent them unto Milan. Then, afterward, by process of time, it happened that the city of Milan began to rebel against the emperor, who was called Frederick I. And this emperor sent to the Archbishop of Cologne, who was called Reynaud, for help. Then this archbishop, through help of diverse lords of the land of Milan, took the city of Milan and destroyed a great part thereof. And the chief men of the city took the bodies of the three kings and hid them privily in the earth. Now, among all others, there was in Milan a lord named Asso. And the emperor hated him more than all the rest of its people. So it happened that in the destruction of the city, the archbishop won Asso's palace through strong hand, and lived therein a great while, for Asso was taken and put into prison. Then, anon, Asso sent privily by his keepers to the Archbishop of Cologne, and prayed him that he would come and speak with him. And it was granted that Asso should go to the archbishop. And when he was come to him, he prayed him that if he would get him grace of the emperor, and his love and the restoration of his lordship, he would give him the bodies of the three kings. When the archbishop heard this, he went to the emperor and prayed for Lord Asso, and got him grace and love. And when this was done, Asso brought secretly the three bodies of the kings to the Archbishop of Cologne. Then the archbishop sent the bodies forth, by private means, a great way out of the city of Milan. Whereupon he went to the emperor anew, and prayed him that he would grant him these three bodies. And the emperor did so with good will. Then the archbishop openly, with great solemnity and procession, brought the three holy kings unto Cologne, and there put them in the fair church of St. Peter, worshipfully. And all the people of the country, with all the reverence they might, received these holy relics. And there they're kept, and beholden of all manner of nations unto this day. Thus endeth the translation of these three worshipful kings, Melchior, Balthazar, and Jaspar. Huh. Okay. Not what I would have expected for a Christmas story. Just, a random sermon. But I guess we have to open somehow. And this is how you get a story like this to the masses. Send it through the church. Alright, let's go ahead and take a short break. We'll try and get through one more of these stories after we return. There are several of these, but I'm not sure how long this next one is, but we'll try and get through one more, and we'll see where we end up when we get toward time. This next one looks, hopefully, maybe, a little less pretentious. Hopefully. Alright, we'll be back in just a little bit. Thanks, guys. Alright, we are back. Alright, so we just finished the retelling of the story of the three wise men, the three magi from the east, the three kings. And it was kind of heavy. Yes, indeed. A little bit of history lesson, a little bit of sermon, a little bit of everything. So, let's see what else this wonderful collection of stories has for us. With the three Christmas masses. Oh, I see. Well, let's try not to judge prematurely, shall we? Part 1. 2 truffled turkeys, Garrigou? Yes, Reverend Father. 2 magnificent turkeys stuffed with truffles. There's no mistake, for I helped to stuff them myself. The flesh almost cracked as they roasted, it was so tight. So, Holy Virgin, and I, who love truffles as... Hurry, give me my surplus, Garrigou. And what else besides the turkeys? What else did you see in the kitchen? Oh, all sorts of good things. Since noon, we've done nothing but pluck pheasants, pewits, woodhens, heathcocks, feathers are scattered thick. Then, from the pond, they've brought eels, and golden carp, and trout, and... What size are the trout, Garrigou? Oh, as big as that, Reverend Father, enormous! Heavens! I have to see them. I seem to see them. Have you put the wine in the flasks? Yes, Reverend Father, I've put the wine in the flasks. But with a mouthful or two as you go to midnight mass, you should see the dining hall in the chateau, full of decanters that sparkle with wine of every color, and the silver dishes, above all the ornamented ones, the flowers, the candlesticks. I never saw anything to equal it. Monsieur the Marquis has invited all the nobility of the neighborhood. You will be at least 40 at table, without counting either the bailiff or the notary. Ah! It will make you very happy to be there, Reverend Father. Why, only to smell the delicious turkeys. The odor of truffles pursues me even yet. Mwah! Come, Garrigou. You must guard against the sin of greediness, and especially on the night of the Nativity. Quickly now, light the candles and sound the first bell of Mass. Midnight is very near, and we must not be late. This conversation was held on Christmas night, in the year of grace 1616, between the Reverend Dom Balaguer, formerly prior of Barnabites, now chaplain in the service of the Sires de Trinquelague, and his clerk, Garrigou. Garrigou? We'll go with Garrigou. It sounds silly. Or at least, what he supposed was his clerk Garrigou, because you will learn that the devil had taken that night on the round face and wavering traits of the young sacristan, the better to tempt the Reverend Father to commit the dreadful sin of gluttony. Now, while the supposed Garrigou, rung with all his might the bells of the seigneurial chapel, the Reverend Father put on his chasuble in the little sacristy of the chateau, his mind already becoming troubled by the gastronomic descriptions he had heard. He repeated to himself, "Roasted turkeys, golden carp, trout as large as that." Outside, the night wind blew, scattering the music of the bells, and one by one the lights began to appear in the shadows about the flanks of Mount Ventoux, upon the summit of which rose the ancient towers of the Trinquelague. These lights were carried by the farmers on their way to attend midnight mass at the chateau. They climbed the paths in groups of 5 or 6, the father leading, lantern in hand, the women enveloped in their big brown mantles, where their infants nestled for shelter. In spite of the hour and the cold, all these honest people marched cheerfully on, sustained by the thought that when they came out from the mass, they would find, as they did each year, tables spread for them below in the kitchens. Now and again, on the rough ascent, the coach of some seigneur preceded by torch-bearing porters, reflected in its glasses the cold moonlight. Or maybe a mule trotted along shaking his bells, and in the light of the lanterns covered with frost, the farmers recognized their bailiff and saluted him as he passed. Good evening, Master Arnoldson. Good evening, my children. The night was clear. The stars were polished with cold. The wind stung, and a fine sleet, which glistened on the clothes without wetting them, kept faithfully the tradition of Christmases white with snow. Raised there aloft, the chateau appeared like the goal of all things, with its enormous mass of towers and gables. The belfry of its chapel mounting into the blue-black sky, and the crowd of small lights that winked, went and came, twinkled at all the windows and seemed, on the somber background of the building, like sparks running through the cinders of burnt paper. Once past the drawbridge and the postern, it was necessary, in order to gain the chapel, to traverse the first courtyard, full of coaches, of valets, of sedan chairs, and bright with the flare of torches and the fires of the kitchens. There was the click of the turnspits, the crash of stewpans, the noises of glass and silver preparing for the dinner. From below, a warm vapor, which smelt of roasting meat and the strong herbs of curious sauces, whispered to the farmers, to the chaplain, to the bailiff, to all the world, "What a revel we are going to have after Mass!" Part 2. It is nice to see something that is broken up a little bit, so I don't need to force myself to interject at every little non sequitur. We can at least try and hold off for the breakings of between. Drillin-din-din, drillin-din-din. Midnight Mass is about to begin. In the chapel of the chateau, a miniature cathedral with arches intercrossed and a wainscot of oak mounting as high as the walls. All the hangings have been arranged, all the candles lit. And what a host of people! And what toilettes! First, seated in the sculptured stall which surrounds the choir, behold the Sire de Trinquelague in a suit of salmon-colored taffeta. Next to him, all the invited nobles. Facing these, on the prie-dieu, trimmed with velvet, is the old dowager marquise, in her robe of fire-colored brocade, and the young Dame de Trinquelague, surmounted by a huge headdress of lace, made in the latest fashion of the French court. Further down, dressed in black, with vast pointed perukes and shaven faces, are the bailiff, Thomas Arnoldson, and the notary, Master Ambroy, two grave objects among the flowing silks and figured damasks. Then came the fat majordomos, the pages, the grooms, the attendants, Dame Barbe, all her keys suspended at her side on a ring of thin silver. At the bottom of the hall, on the benches, are the servants, the yeomen and their families, and lastly, beyond, all about the doors as they open and shut discreetly, are the scullions who steal in between two sauces to get a little of the Mass, carrying an odor of the revelry into the church, all in its gay attire and warm with so many burning candles. It is a glimpse of their little white caps that distracts the celebrant, or is it a glimpse of their little white caps that distracts the celebrant of the Mass? Or it may be the clangor made by Garrigou's bells. What that pulsating sound which shakes the altar with an infernal vibration and seems to say all the time, hurry up, or we'll be done. We'll soon be at table. The fact is that each time it sounds that peal of the devil, the chaplain forgets his Mass and thinks of nothing but the coming revel. He pictures to himself the uproar of the kitchens, the furnace heated like a blacksmith's forge, the vapor of opening trenchers, and in that vapor 2 magnificent turkeys, buttered, tender, bursting with truffles. Or perhaps he saw past the files of little pages, bearing dishes enveloped in tempting steam, and with them entered the grand saloon already prepared for the feast. Oh, deliciousness! Behold, the immense table all set and sparkling, the peacocks in their plumes, the pheasants with their open wings of reddish-brown, the ruby-colored flagons, the pyramids of fruit peeping from the green branches, and those marvelous fish, of which Garrigou told. Ah, well, yes, Garrigou. Held aloft on a bed of fennel, the mother-of-pearl scales as bright as when they came from the water, with a bouquet of odorous herbs in their monster-like nostrils. So distinct is the vision of these marvels that it seems to Dom Balaguer as if all the wonderful dishes are served before him on the embroideries of the altar cloth, and 2 or 3 times in the place of Dominus Vobiscum he is surprised to find himself repeating the Benedicti. The Benedicite. Benedicite? Benedicite. My Latin is not up to snuff, and I make no allusions and pretensions to having a functioning grasp of Latin. Saving these slight mistakes, the holy man does his office very conscientiously, without skipping a line, without omitting a genuflection, and all goes well enough as far as the end of the first Mass, because, you know, on Christmas night, the same celebrant must repeat 3 consecutive Masses. "One!" said the chaplain, with a sigh of relief. Then, without losing a minute, he made a sign to his clerk, or the person he believed to be his clerk, and Drellindin, Drellindin, the bells up there. The second Mass begins, and with it begins also the sin of Dom Balaguer. "Hurry, hurry, let's get done," cries the thin voice of Garrigou's bell. And this time, the unlucky priest, abandoning himself to the demon of gluttony, rushes through the Missal, devouring its pages with all the avidity of an overcharged appetite. Frantically he bows, arises, makes the signs of the cross, goes through the genuflections, abbreviates all his gestures, the sooner to be finished. Scarcely does he extend his arms to the gospel or strike his breast where it is required. Between the clerk and him, it is a race to see which will jabber the faster. Verse and response hurry each other, tumble over each other. The words, hardly pronounced because it takes too much time to open the mouth, become incomprehensible murmurs. Remis mea culpa. I'm okay with this, actually, yeah. Like hard-working vintagers pressing grapes in a vat, both wade through the Latin of the Mass, splashing it on all sides. Scum, says Balaguer. Stupio, responds Garrigou. And all the while, the damnable chime sounds in their ears, like those little bells put on the post horses to make them gallop more swiftly. Believe me, under such conditions, a low Mass is vastly expedited. "2!" said the chaplain, all out of breath. Then, without taking time to breathe, red, perspiring, he tumbled down the stairs of the altar. Drillin-din-din, drillin-din-din, the third Mass begins. Only a step or so, and then the dining hall. But, alas, the nearer the revel approaches, the more the unfortunate Balaguer is seized with the very folly of impatience and greediness. His vision accentuates it. The golden carp, the roast turkeys are there. He may touch them. He may... Oh, Holy Virgin, the dishes steam. The wines send forth sweet odors. And shaking out its reckless song, the bell cries to him. Hurry up, still faster, still faster. But how can he go any faster? He scarcely moves his lips. He pronounces fully not a single word. He tries to cheat the good God altogether of his Mass, and that is what brings his ruin. By temptation upon temptation, he begins to jump one verse, then two, then the epistle is too long, he does not finish it, skims the gospel, passes by the creed without even entering, skips the patra, salutes from afar the preface, and by bounds and jumps precipitates himself into eternal damnation, always following the infamous Garrigu, Vaderecho Satanas, who seconds him with marvelous skill, tucks up his chasuble, turns the leaves 2 by 2, disarranges the music desk, reverses the flagons, and unceasingly rings the bell more and more vigorously, more and more quickly. He's not the only one rushing tonight. You should have seen what a figure all the assistants cut, obliged to follow like mimics, a mass of which they did not understand a word. Some rose when others kneeled, or seated themselves when others stood, and all the actors in this singular office mixed themselves on the benches in numberless contrary attitudes. The star of Christmas, on its journey through the heavens yonder by the little manger, paled with astonishment at the confusion. The Abbey's in a dreadful hurry. I can't follow him at all, said the aged dowager, shaking her headdress with bewilderment. Master Arnoton, his great steel spectacles on his nose, searched in his prayer book where the deuce the words could be. But, after all, that gallant host, which itself was thinking only of the feast, was far from being vexed, because the mass rode past. And when Balaguer, with beaming countenance, turned toward the assembly, crying with all his might, Ite missa est! With a single voice they returned, Deo gratias! So joyously, so fervently, that one might have thought them already at table responding to the first toast of the night. And that is the end of part 2. It is something of a rush. But honestly, if I had to sit through a triple mass, I'd want it to be like this too. Alright, part 3. 5 minutes later, the crowd of seigneurs was seated in the grand dining hall, the chaplain in the midst of them. The chateau, illuminated from top to bottom, echoed with songs, cries, laughter, uproar, and the venerable Dom Balaguer planted his fork in the wing of a wood hen, drowning the remorse of his sin under floods of wine of the Pope and the sweet juices of the meats. So much did he eat and drink that the poor holy man died in the night of a terrible attack of sickness, without even having time to repent. Then, nearing the morning, he arrived in heaven with all the savor of the feast still about him, and I leave you to imagine how he was received. "Retire from my sight, evil Christian," said the sovereign judge. "Thy fault is dark enough to efface a whole life of virtue. Ah, thou hast robbed me of a mass tonight. Thou shalt pay me back 300 in its place. Thou shalt not enter into paradise unless thou shalt have celebrated in thy proper chapel these 300 Christmas masses in the presence of all those who have sinned by thy fault and with thee." This, then, is the true legend of Dom Balaguer, as they tell it in the land of olives. Today, the Chateau of Trinquelague is no more, but the chapel still stands erect on the summit of Mont Ventoux, in a grove of green oaks. The wind beats its disjointed portal. The grass creeps across its threshold. The birds have built in the angles of the altar and in the embrasures of the high windows, whence the colored panes have long ago vanished. But it appears that every year at Christmas, a supernatural light runs about these ruins, and that, in going to Mass or feast, the peasants see the chapel illuminated by invisible candles which burn brightly, even through the wind and snow. You may laugh, if you will, but a vine dresser of the neighborhood named Get a gay. Not get a goo, get a gay. Without doubt, a descendant of Garrigu has assured me that one Christmas night, finding himself a little so-so-ish, he became lost on the mountain beside Trinkalog. And behold what he saw. At 11 o'clock, nothing. All was silent, dark, lifeless. Suddenly, toward midnight, a chime sounded up above from a clock, an old, old chime which seemed 6 leagues away. Pretty soon, on the ascending road, Garrigue saw lights trembling in the uncertain shadows. Under the porch of the chapel, somebody walked, somebody whispered, "Good evening, Master Arneton. Good evening, my children." When the whole company was entered, my vine-dresser, who was exceedingly brave, approached stealthily, and, peeping through the broken door, saw a strange spectacle. All those who had passed him were ranged about the choir, in the ruined nave, as if the ancient benches still existed. Beautiful dames in brocade with coifs of lace, seigneurs bedizened from top to toe, peasants in flowered jackets like those of our grandfathers, everything with an ancient air, faded, dusty, worn out. Now and then the night birds, habitual dwellers in the chapel, awakened by these lights, winged about the candles, whose flames mounted straight and vague as if they burnt behind gauze. And what amused Garrigue most was a certain personage with great steel spectacles, who shook at each instant his high black peruke, on which one of the birds had alighted and entangled itself, silently beating its wings. At the farthest end, a little old man of boyish size, on his knees in the midst of the choir, pulled desperately at the chimeless and silent bell, while a priest, attired in ancient gold, went and came before the altar, reciting orisons of which one heard not a single word. Surely that was Dom Balaguer in the act of saying his 3rd low mass. That is the end of the story of the 3 masses. That one is honestly a little bit more fun than the last. I will give it that. Yes, it's still preachy, but it's less preachy in a biblical sort of way. It's a watch this priest fall into temptation sort of thing, which, yeah, preachy, just not a sermon, is a good way to put it. Alright, let me see how long the next one is. The next one's kind of hefty. Yeah, we're going from page 22 to 37. Oh, lordy. Let me see. I'd rather not skip about, but let me see how much we have all told, honestly. This is actually quite a bit longer than I expected, to be entirely frank. Yeah, this is quite the collection of stories. So, given that, I think we actually need to hit about 35%-ish tonight. So I guess we're gonna be starting into the next one, and we'll see where it leads us. Yeah, and this is volume 1 of 4, mind you. We're just reading volume 1, and this will probably take... Actually, you know what? If we split, because if we've got tonight, Saturday or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we'll do the poem on Tuesday. So if we split this 4 ways, we can make it work, and that would make my life a lot easier. So we might call it here as far as the reading goes. So that puts us at about 23% of the way through. Where was the first story? Yeah, the first story started at about 5. The last story ends at about 95. So I think that should be fine, because we've got how many stories left before us? We've got Russian Christmas Party, 2 Christmases, Tale of a Turkey, A Still Christmas, Rond, and Christmas in the Desert. So 6 stories left. Yeah, so if we can get through a solid 2 stories a night, we should be all right. You know, that seems like a good rhythm to me. It's the holidays, after all. You don't want to overwork ourselves, right? But we do have some time. Let me see. We might do a little bit of a shift. Yeah, let me look through this. Yeah, Russian Christmas, 2 Christmases, Tale of a Turkey, Still Christmas, Rond, and Christmas in the Desert. I'm not sure that I catch any of those as being overly familiar by a title, at least, but it may just be a lack of my own exposure. Alright, so, as we had said, there are more holidays than just Christmas in this time of year. We've kind of alluded to it throughout all of our readings so far, but it's been... Oh, yeah, you know what? The Russian Christmas Party is likely Tolstoy. It's kind of hefty and long. I would believe it. Wouldn't even need to twist my arm to believe it. I would believe it. Yeah, so let's go ahead and spend a little bit of our extra time tonight to have a little bit of respect given to one of the other primary holidays of the season. We've got, and it actually is very fitting for our format, because as you may or may not know, a large part of Hanukkah is the telling of the story of Hanukkah throughout the course of the week, 8 days, and is telling stories in general. So it fits really serendipitously to us. So we're going to have a little bit of a diversion tonight, and we'll start in with the story of Hanukkah in brief. And actually, we may be able to get through all of it here, and that should work. And this is as adapted by Rabbi Robert B. Barr. So, it's authentic. Now, I've already made it clear that my Latin is wanting. I make absolutely no claims as to proficiency in Yiddish. This is gonna be a butchering. I'm sorry. But you're stuck with me. So, this is what it is. Eyes wide open. Okay. The story of Hanukkah in brief. I'll just hide our book thing because it's not relevant for the moment, but I don't want to change it. Alright. Remembering light. During the time of the Second Temple, the Holy Land was ruled by cruel Greeks. They robbed the Jews of their property and drove them from the land. The Hanukkah lights remind us of the great miracle that a small band of Jews defeated the mighty Greek armies. Fighting for light. The Greeks were philosophers. They accepted the Torah as a book of wisdom, but not as something holy that connects us to Hashem. In the end, they made Torah learning illegal and outlawed mitzvot like Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, Brit Milah, and the holiness of Jewish marriage. The Maccabees risked their lives to keep Torah alive. That's why they won. The miracle of light. An even greater miracle than defeating the Greek armies was the miracle of the oil. The Greeks had made all the oil in the Beit HaMikdash impure. Miraculously, the Maccabees found one jar that had been overlooked. But it only had enough oil for one day. So great was their love of God that they lit it anyway. Hashem made another miracle, and the oil burned for 8 days. Everyone could see that the Shekinah dwelt with the Jews. Joyous light. With tremendous joy, the Jews cleansed the Beit HaMikdash and began to serve Hashem once again. Nowadays we have to draw on that joy, because the darkness has grown very great. That's why we make Hanukkah parties, with dreidels, latkes, and Hanukkah geld. Joy has the power to overcome any negative thing, and break any evil decree. Adding light. Every day of Hanukkah, we add another candle, till all 8 candles of the menorah are ablaze. By adding a candle every night for 8 days, we charge ourselves up with light, so that we will constantly be adding in Torah and mitzvot, which are compared to light, throughout all the days of the year to come. Holy light. The light of the Hanukkah candles is holy, like the light of the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash. We are careful not to use it for any purpose. Our mitzvah is just to look at the candles and listen to the story that they tell. Filling the world with light. The miracle of Hanukkah occurred in a dark time, when there were wicked decrees against the Jews. But the Maccabees had courage and never lost hope. The Mesrut Nefesh, self-sacrifice, turned the darkness into light. Today, too, our Mesrut Nefesh for Torah and Mitzvot will light up the world and bring Moshiach now. Okay. So, there is more to this, but let's actually use this little thing, because that was the very briefest of introductions to Hanukkah. But we've got, as you wouldn't guess, some extra Hanukkah nights throughout the rest of this week. So, we'll have a short reading for each of these on probably Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, both to fill our time and also to share the spirit between more than just the one of these winter holidays. It's important to everybody, and might as well just enjoy it. And this is, very admittedly, extremely new to me. I've got a very, very, very small amount of exposure to Jewish tradition. So, this is a learning experience for us all today. So let's have some fun with it, right? Alright, so with that, I think we're going to end a little bit early tonight. We're doing well enough on time, and I'd rather not rush things because I'm getting lazy at the end of the year. Sue me. No, it is just the time of year to have some fun and sit back. I'm forcing myself to get in the spirit, shall we say. But I encourage everyone else to also join us in a bit of rest, recuperation, relaxation, and a marked lack of exertion. Because, are you really celebrating if you're sweaty? I think not. I think not. So, take it easy. It's the end of the year. You got some PTO left? Burn a little bit. It's fine. You'll do all right. That is true. It depends on the celebration. Mine, I prefer to be sweat-free. That sounds like work. Alright, guys. As always, thank you very much for joining us. Tonight has been In the Yule Log Glow, the first couple stories. We'll continue these probably for the rest of our readings. They're by various authors. They're collected by our intrepid Harrison S. Morris. And we'll also take some time to reflect and think on other holidays in the season. If anyone has anything other that they would like us to hear or read or observe another holiday, let me know. I'm wide open. Alright. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful night. And until next time, happy holidays. And good night.